Good evening. Welcome in Monday night, the final regular season edition of State of the Tigers here on PowerMizzou.com. I'm Gabe DeArmond. We're actually going to start with two other people here on your screen very shortly. Drew King will join me as well as our special guest, but we got to pay bills before we get started. Want to remind you every single Monday night, we are brought to you by my friend and my insurance agent, James Carlton, State Farm Insurance in Webster Groves, Missouri. If you live in Missouri or Illinois, get in touch with James, carltoninsurance.net. Give him a call at 314-961-4800. Tell him that Power Mizzou sent you. He's going to give you a free quote, and then he's going to donate a little bit of money on your behalf to Mizzou's NIL efforts. And that is a good thing for you, a good thing for him because he gets business, and a good thing for Dennis Gates. Maybe he will have one more guy because of your efforts to guard a last-second three-pointer next time it happens. All right, we're going to get to it tonight. We normally, Drew King and I start talking for a little while and then bring in our guests, but we try to accommodate everybody's schedules, and so we're just going to start out with our guests. There's Drew King. I'll be honest, he's fine. He's here every week. You're not all that interested in him. So now we are going to bring in Evan Miyakawa, who runs appropriately evanmiya.com. Evan, it seems like it would be bad if anybody else ran that site. So well done on your part taking care of that.
Oh, come on. I'm here to see Drew. What are we talking about?
Thank you. Somebody.
Everybody's fired up about Drew for sure. Hey, all right. For those of you who don't know, Evan runs I don't even know exactly how to describe this. I would describe it as like the Bible of college basketball analytics. I mean, if there is something you want to know about college basketball, whether it is roster building, transfer portal, which lineup's the best, with players ranking, Evan, first of all, I read an interview with you that said your lasting childhood memory of college basketball is Gordon Haywood missing the shot against Duke. So, I mean, well done. You've apparently accomplished all this by the age of 19, because some of us were already full-time professionally covering college basketball for about 10 years by that. So, but just give the people watching kind of an idea of everything you do in the 30,000 foot view of your site for people who maybe aren't as dialed in on college basketball analytics.
Yeah, well, man, that game, I was at the Butler Duke National Championship game. I think it was early high school when that happened. But I lived about 15 minutes away from where that game took place. And so my dad and I were able to go. I was a big Butler Bulldogs fan growing up, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, if you're unfamiliar, my background is in stats and sports analytics, but my favorite sport my entire life has been college basketball. And so I have my PhD in statistics from Baylor University. And so several years ago, while I was still in school, I decided to create this college basketball analytics website, initially kind of just as a side project, but it's grown so much organically over the last several years where it's now used by a lot of coaches as well as journalists and fans for analyzing the sport. And so I previously worked for a consulting company where I worked with NBA teams on statistics and research. But the site has grown so much that I was able to leave that and do this full time for almost a year now, which has been really cool. So the site, which you can find at evanmiya.com, covers a lot of different things, but it's really focused on player and team performance as well as lineup analysis, transfer portal projections. We're almost to the transfer portal season, and really just lots of other tools used by Division I coaches for roster building, game scouting, and things of that nature.
Oh, Evan, don't remind me. It's almost transfer portal season. I'm not. we're a ways out from that. Hang on.
Let's focus on the current season for now. Yeah.
And I forgot to do this when you jumped on. We do this every podcast. I got a party popper for you, Evan. So real quick, just hang on.
This one has to work, Drew.
There we go.
There you go. All right, go ahead, Drew.
Yeah. Okay. So Evan, tell us a little bit about your ratings and kind of how you evaluate team and player performance.
So a lot of what I do starts at the player level, and I have this metric called Bayesian performance rating, which I believe to be the best measure that we have statistically of quantifying the value that a player brings to their team when they're on offense and defense on the court. So this metric looks at both your individual box stats, so your scoring, rebounding, turnovers, all that stuff, but it also looks at your impact on team performance when you are on the court, just kind of outside of your individual numbers. So when you're on the court, how well is the team playing offensively and defensively, adjusting for all other players on the court with you at the same time? And it kind of brings in all of this information along with a little bit of historical information about each player to predict their value going forward on offense and defense. And so you're going to see some players near the top of the leaderboard in BPR who are kind of your classic All-American candidates or All-Conference candidates. So right now, Cooper Flagg is number 1, Janai Broom is number 2 nationally, and those players have a huge gap on everyone else. But then you're also going to see other players in the top 10 who are not kind of receiving that sort of buzz, but my models can see how important they are for their team success, both in terms of their individual box stat contributions, but also in terms of they're having a massive impact on team performance when they're on the floor. One of these players in the top 10 right now is Anthony Robertson at Missouri, and we can get into him because the numbers suggest that he is having a massive, massive impact for this Tigers squad and is a huge reason why they've been so good this season.
That's kind of where I wanted to go. I mean, you've got Anthony listed or rated as the number 6 player in the country. I think if you ask any Missouri fan, hey, who's their best player? They're going to go Caleb Grill. Then they're going to go Tamar Bates. Ant might be third. He's going to get 0 All-SEC votes, I think, probably. 0 All-American votes, certainly. But he's rated ahead of guys like Zakai Ziegler and some of these bigger names. So what is it, when your model, what is it about his game?
Well, we can touch on Caleb Grill in a second. He has the highest offensive grade on the team, but Anthony Robinson, part of why he ranks so high nationally in the overall grade is because the offensive stuff is there, but the defensive impact as well has been superb. So when you look at the defensive side of things, Anthony Robinson is top 10 right now in defensive BPR. So that's basically saying of all the players in Division I, he is top 10 in terms of per possession defensive impact when he's on the court. Obviously, his individual stats have been pretty good. He's averaging 10 points per game. He's got assists. He gets a lot of steals. He's efficient shooting-wise. And when you put all of that into account, just based on his individual stats, he's top 10 in the SEC based on how impressive his per-game stat line is. But the other thing, too, is when you look at just who is the key to Missouri playing well, one of the metrics I have for this is adjusted team efficiency margin. It basically looks at how much are you outscoring opponents by when a certain player is on the court, adjusted for the specific opponents that player faced and accounting for that. Anthony Robertson is number 1 on the team, and specifically there is a huge, huge boost in team performance on the defensive side when he is on the court. Missouri's defense is allowing 13 points less per 100 possessions when Anthony Robertson is on the court versus on the bench. So when he is in the game, Missouri's defense, which has been, kind of suspect this year, is playing at a much higher level when Robinson is in the game, and when he's out of the game, they're really struggling. And so that is part of why he gets such a high defensive grade, and that ends up in an overall grade that rates top 10 nationally.
Yeah, and Evan, I find it really interesting too because a lot of places can quantify the offensive rating, right? That's a lot of numbers can go into that. Not a lot of places can do the defensive stuff. So I think that's a really interesting number. Have you seen Ant Robinson do well on the offensive side of the ball, though, that's helping out his overall rating?
Well, I think part of it is every team has players who you're going to have your guys who are the key focal points on offense, right? And so for this team, obviously Caleb Grill is that guy from outside. And then you have games where, like it's Mark Mitchell dominating on the inside. But you have 5 guys on the court, and you need all 5 of those guys to be filling their roles. And if you're not providing value in some way, defenses can kind of scout you out of the game or basically make your offense a lot less potent because they're not really worried about what you're doing or providing. What Anthony Robertson is doing is he is one of these classic players who is never going to be at the top of the opponent's scout in terms of taking away offensive threats, but he is kind of distributing and kind of being a secondary scorer when needed and really filling all the other parts. And when he gets the ball in his hands and shoots it, he's very efficient. He's shooting over 50% from the field, and he's shooting over 45% from 3. So again, he's not going to be your main shot taker on this team, but when he's getting in the ball and he's asked to score, he's very efficient with it. And he's also distributing well in terms of his assist numbers. And you can see that, the offense is holding its own when he's in offensively, and he's kind of allowing those other guys on offense to shine.
All right, Evan, you mentioned Caleb Grill, and look, I think he is like I was asking Dennis Gates a question. When anybody brings up Caleb, it's the shooting, right? It's, oh, hey, he just pulled up from 42 feet and made a shot, right? No big deal. I'm not sure he gets enough credit for being an all around player, but the offensive rating is what stands out. So, guys, I'm going to read you the list of players that ranks higher offensively individually in the country on Evan's site than Caleb Grill. Janai Broom, Jackson Money from North Dakota State. I'll be honest, I don't know anything about him. And Cooper Flag. That's the whole list. Caleb Grill's fourth. What kind of offensive season is this? Like in the bigger picture, obviously, hey, two of the three guys ahead of him are National Player of the Year.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most underappreciated offensive seasons that we've seen from a player this year, maybe in a long time, because Caleb Grill, as you mentioned, clocks in at number 4 in terms of predicted offensive impact in the country. And when you look at just his individual stats, there are only 2 players who have a more impressive offensive sort of package in terms of their per possession stats. That's Janai Broom and Mark Sears, also in the SEC. Caleb Grill clocks in at 3rd after that in my metric called box offensive Bayesian performance rating, which is basically just looking at your box stats and trying to figure out how good of a player you are. So he's top 5 in both of those. He's been incredible. And then when you look at, okay, is he actually important for this team's offensive success? I mentioned that Anthony Robertson was the most important player, and just in terms of how good is the team performing when he's on the court, Caleb Grill is second. So, and specifically when you look at the offensive impact that he has, when Caleb Grill is on the court, his offensive on-off splits are incredible. The team is scoring 18 more points per 100 possessions when Grill is on the court versus on the bench. So when he is not on the court, they are really struggling a lot more. And when he is on the court, whether it's he's making threes or getting stuff at the rim or, causing defenders to pay attention to him to free up other players, he's really having a big impact, both in terms of his individual stats and his impact on the team's offensive performance.
Well, Evan, looking at kind of the team overall, if you go to the team ratings on your site, Mizzou's got a little flame emoji next to it. They check in at number 21. What's stood out to you about the team as a whole for this season so far?
Yeah, so right now I have Missouri ranked 21st in the country, and that's basically predicting how good they're going to be going forward. The thing that's really interesting about this team that people have been kind of paying attention to is their offense is outstanding. I have them as the 6th best offense in the country, but just inside the top 70 on defense. So there's a big difference between those two things. And when you look at specifically the SEC, which is far and away the best conference in the country this year, Mizzou's offense is the 3rd best in the SEC behind just Bama and Auburn, but it's the 3rd worst defense in the conference. But the thing I really like about this team is they've lost 2 of 3, and yet they're still one of the hottest teams in the country in terms of how much they've improved over the last month. They're the most improved team on my website in the last month in the SEC. That's up 14 spots. So I think they were 35th in the country about a month ago. They're up to 21st, and that's with the kind of recent slow of their progress. They've still been really, really good recently. And so I think they're still trending very much in the right direction to make noise in the SEC tournament and in March Madness, because you want teams heading into this month playing their best basketball and being better squads than they were early in the year. That's certainly what we're seeing from the Missouri Tigers right now.
We're talking, guys, with Evan Miyakawa. His site, evanmiya.com. That's MIYA.com. And we could spend 2 hours tonight talking about everything that's on there. We promised Evan we'd only keep him about 20 minutes. So anywhere you look, Missouri's, you're mentioning predictions, predictive metrics kind of outpace the resume so far, right? I think you've got them 26th as far as a resume ranking. And I know you don't necessarily get too deep into, like, nobody can predict what this committee is going to do. Who knows? But, what do you see for Missouri here over these next 2 or 3 weeks going into Selection Sunday in the tournament?
Yeah, right now my resume quality metric that basically just looks at how good are your wins and losses based on what you had on your schedule and how difficult it would be for a team to navigate that schedule. They're kind of in the 7 seed range, but bracketology wise, they're kind of being viewed more in the 5 seed range. And I think that's partly because their predictive metrics are a little bit better. By and large, I think the thing that's impressive about this team is that they don't really, the best part of their resume is the lack of bad losses. Their worst loss, according to resume quality, is at home to Texas A&M, who has been having a recent skid, but Texas A&M is a very strong team. And obviously you've got big wins like, on the road against Florida, obviously being the biggest one. So this team hasn't really shown an ability to like drop games that they shouldn't drop. And so that to me is a good sign for them to get past the first round in the NCAA tournament. If we're kind of talking outlook for the tournament, honestly, my expectations for this team are to kind of land most likely on the 5 line. They could get up to a 4 if they have a good couple games down in the next week or two. If we're talking tournament outlook here, I think Missouri has a pretty decent shot at making a Sweet 16. If they're a 4 or 5 seed, they're probably going to, play another team around their caliber, kind of in that second round game. But I think they've got a decent chance of getting past there. The thing, though, that's tough is that this year's 1 seeds are really, really strong. In particular, we're talking Duke, Auburn, and Houston. 3 of the 4 potential 1 seeds are much further ahead than the rest of the country in terms of kind of elite talent there. And so, like, even just looking at these hypothetical matchups that Missouri could have, if they were to play Duke tomorrow on a neutral, I give Missouri just an 18% chance of beating Duke. That's no slight on Missouri. That's just how good Duke is. 23% chance against either Houston or Auburn. So pretty tough to get past that if you're in a 4-5 versus 1 matchup in that spot. Against maybe a Florida, Alabama, or Tennessee, it would be a little bit easier. But it definitely, depending on the matchup, could be kind of a tough sell to get past that point if you're kind of in that 4 to 5 seed range.
Gotcha.
All right, we're just going to keep Evan for a couple more minutes, and I'm going to let Drew finish off in just a second with his own predictive metric for Missouri that he has figured out, and he's going to get your opinion of it. But I want to ask you, there are dozens of games every night. What goes into updating this thing? Like how much work is this day to day? I'm sure you're not sitting here punching in every number, but how's it go day to day?
Well, I do watch every game and write down box stats and update it on a spreadsheet. No, I don't. That would be a lot. No, thankfully, all of the processes that I've built in are automated. So every single night, it grabs all the data, it computes all the stuff, it uploads it. So I don't have to spend time manually punching stuff in, thankfully. But obviously, a lot of work during the season and during the off season goes into updating algorithms, improving them, making them better, adding new things on the website to make it easier to navigate, or new features. Like this year I added a bunch of new stuff that's especially going to be helpful in the portal season for evaluating player skills and predicting how good they're going to be going forward. So a lot of work goes on behind the scenes. And obviously a lot of it too is driven by conversations that I have, not just with fans, but with coaches, because a lot of coaches are using my website for, building rosters and evaluating lineups and things like that. And so much of what I'm doing and trying to build is going towards helping coaches be able to, ultimately be more successful. And so a lot of what I do is driven by that.
Gotcha. Well, Evan, like Gabe said, there's a new metric sweeping the nation right now. We're calling it the Drew King factor. And I think Mike in the chat, second comment, brought up he doesn't want to see me at OU. And basically what the DKF is, Evan, is when I'm in the building, road teams tend to perform significantly worse, and specifically when I'm there. So Missouri this season has a negative 5.6 DKF. There's only 2 teams in the nation with a positive 1. That's Texas A&M and Illinois. They're both positive 3. Everyone else is in the negatives. So I just wanted to see
if we 5
could...
Missouri games on the road, and they're 0-5.
So we just wanted to see if we could get this possibly added as like an extra column on the website for you.
Well, here's the problem though. Does that carry into the tournament? Because there is not a road team in the tournament. So how do you navigate that as being a part of evaluating team success if we were to add this to, say, the team ratings page on my website?
So this is the thing, right? So like technically you're still away from home in a neutral site game. So Illinois positive 3 DKF in the bragging rights game. Mizzou was negative 3. So that's how you kind of
just
evaluate
not in your own building. Yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently nobody's going to win.
Yeah, all the games, if you're there, are just going to be awful. So please stay at home.
All right, Evan, really appreciate your time, man. We love your site, use it all the time, and just we had the possible subscription up there. I mean, can anybody subscribe to this and get the information? Any fan that's watching this?
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of free stuff on my website, but if you really want to get into the nitty gritty and prepping stuff for your brackets in March, as well as that hypothetical matchup preview that I mentioned, where you can put in any two teams and see how they would match up, what the game probabilities would be like, what the projected score, strengths and weaknesses for each team. When you're filling out your bracket, you can do that for anybody, and so that's available to people who are subscribed. I think at the premium level, and there's a special going on right now where you can access everything for 1 month at a reduced price. So head over to evanmiya.com, check it out. There's a lot of stuff there that's especially valuable this time of year.
All right, Evan, thanks a ton, man. Really appreciate it. Have a good night, and we look forward to following all your stuff here over the next month.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. This was awesome.
Yeah, and Evan, I'll
All right.
send you all the numbers for the DKF stuff later.
Yeah, perfect.
Have a good one, man. All right, that is Evan Miyakawa, evanmiya.com, EvanMiya.com. It is like, Drew, you seriously could spend hours on there. And I'll be honest, I need somebody to explain some of it to me, right? There's so much there. I mean, you could spend a week there breaking down numbers.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's always really interesting. And I know like there's a lot of different sites out there that you can use, but Evans is up there as just like one of the cleanest, one of the most informative, everything that you could want.
Yeah, and I like it says right there what team ratings, player rate, like it's very easy to navigate. I will say I ran I think Billy was on the bracket simulation page earlier. You can run an NCAA tournament bracket simulation. I will say it only took me 4 attempts to get Missouri to the Final Four.
Oh,
So I think the first one had him losing in the second round. Second had him upset victim to Yale. Third had them in the Sweet 16, and the fourth one had them beating Auburn and going to the Final Four. This particular one has them losing to Yale. But look, I don't actually like. That's the beautiful part about like we can break down every number. Right now, Missouri could lose to Yale in the first round, and they could go to the Final Four. That's what this month is.
it's all on the table. March is gonna march, and we saw that against Vanderbilt. I feel like that was our first taste of it.
March 1st, yeah. So, all right, look, we don't want to spend a bunch of time breaking down Vanderbilt. We did that on Saturday night. Hey, it sucks, but it's what happens. I drew in looking at just all of the different places, and I shouldn't be surprised by this because by now we're close to 30 games into the season, and these games are all quad one games. But like what you kind of forget is one loss doesn't really hurt you that much.
Yeah.
Like Missouri's resume I don't think would be significantly different if that shot went in, didn't go in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And that's why it also felt like maybe there was a little bit of overreaction, right? Just because like it was one loss and it was
the way it happened, though.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the other thing too, is like losses can be beneficial in some ways too, right? So like if they get into a similar situation in the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament where it's a one possession game with 10 seconds on the clock, they're up 3, I'm going to guess it's going to go a little bit differently than it did against Vanderbilt.
You would hope. So.
You would hope.
You would hope
right?
So.
And Mark Mitchell brought that up. He said, this is something that we can learn from. And so, and specifically, he said, it's better to lose now than it is later in March. And that part, I think, is the most important.
Right. And that's kind of like we are nearing the time where mistakes end your season. We're not there yet, but we're getting close to, okay, you get all your bad stuff out of the way, because if you come out and fall down 12-0 or whatever in the NCAA tournament, like your season's could be over by the time you look up. And it's going to happen to everybody, but obviously you want to prolong it as much as possible. All right. So, and want to invite you guys questions and comments in the chat. We'll jump to them here shortly, but just a couple things, Drew. Everybody seems to, I think the consensus right now is a 5 seed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem about right?
I think so. Yeah.
What do you think it takes to get to a 4, and what do you think would drop them to a 6?
I think dropping to a 6 would probably take losing both games, and I think moving up to a 4 would take at least winning both games.
I think moving up to a 4 takes 2-1 in the next 3. And obviously we don't know what the third one is, right? So whether that's, hey, you beat, Oklahoma and Kentucky, and then you get the 4 seed and lose your first game to Bama. That's the interesting part about the SEC tournament. I was talking to somebody today, like, you want the 4 seed. If you get the 4 seed, ironically, your first game's going to be against 5 seeded Alabama, right? So, like, it could be very easy not to win a game in the tournament. But the flip side of that is, if you don't get a top 4 seed, like, you're probably playing Georgia or Arkansas in the first round, and that doesn't really do anything for you.
Right. I don't even know that it would
help you. It could maybe hurt you a little bit.
Right. That's the thing. It could, I think, maybe hurt you, especially if you're trying to stay above that 6 seed line for the NCAA tournament. But
especially if you're going in with like a 4-7 road neutral record, if you lose that first one, it makes it look that much worse. So, so that's why I think, like, if you win both this week and then you lose to Bama, no big deal. If you win both this week and then you lose in the SEC tournament to Georgia, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I would not want to be playing Georgia right now, personally.
Why's that?
Well, they beat Florida last week, Gabe, and then they also went on the road and beat Texas. So Georgia's looking pretty hot. Georgia is looking like it might make the NCAA tournament, and I thought they were going to be left for dead.
So Missouri's opponent it's Wednesday night. I'm confused on my days. Missouri's opponent on Wednesday night, Oklahoma. They are 4-12 in this league. And I think pretty much everybody right now has them in.
Really?
This is nuts, man.
Oof.
I mean, I know Lenardi has them in. Billy, I don't know if you can scroll over to like first 4 out and stuff on Jerry Palm's that's up right now. I'm not sure if Jerry Palm's latest projection has them in or out, but like they're not on the last 4 in or first 4 out. I don't know. They might be in the field for Jerry Palm. They're in the field as an 11 seed.
Holy moly.
Like, I don't know if that speaks to the strength of the SEC or the weakness of college basketball in general.
I think it's got to be the latter, because even at, what did you say it was, 4-12 right now?
Yeah, they're 4-12 right now.
Like, their wins are like South Carolina and LSU, I'm sure, and so yeah, like I don't know that I would have them in if I was the NCAA committee personally.
Yeah, they're 53rd in the net. So they are 3-1 against quad 2, 2-1 against quad 3, 7-0 against quad 4. They're 5-10 against quad 1. So like 10 of their 12 losses are quad 1 losses. And I was talking with a friend. Here's the other thing contributing to this. The SEC, everybody knows how good it is, right? The Big 12 has a number of good teams. Not everybody, but a number of good teams. The Big 10 has a handful of good teams. The ACC is a steaming trash heap. And I think that is like, you have to find these teams from somewhere. And the ACC is going to contribute 3 of them.
And it's
right.
Funny.
I mean, it's Duke, Clemson, and Louisville. I don't think anybody else from that league is in.
No, and it's crazy because they added like a bunch of other teams to it, and they all stink. Like they're not good. So it makes me wonder, like, if the Pac-12 was still around, how many bids would they get?
Right, because like Arizona would be in.
Right.
Oregon's in.
UCLA's in.
Sure, UCLA's in. Yeah, but like Colorado's awful. Utah's not any good. USC sucks. Arizona State sucks. Oregon State, I don't even know if they're still playing basketball. Washington State, same. Washington sucks. So I'm not sure the Pac-12 would have 4, I guess.
4 at the most. And the ACC would still have 3. So
this is basically college football again. Let's just get the SEC and Big 10 together. Let them have a giant invitational, and everybody else can play for a little bit too.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Yeah.
And look, this is not the best year to consider NCAA tournament expansion. I'll give you that. This is
There is no good year to consider that, but this is the worst year.
yes,
I mean,
100%.
seriously, Oklahoma and Georgia and Texas, like 2 of those 3 are getting in, and we're talking about adding more teams. I'm sorry, this is stupid.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't have a rebuttal right now.
Good. Like, I'm not asking you to necessarily agree with me, but at least you're not fighting me, so I'm good with that.
Okay.
All right. So, somebody had asked, in the chat if Missouri can get up to a 4. I'll be honest here, I kind of expect them to.
Really?
Because first of all, I think they're winning on Wednesday night. I don't think Oklahoma's any good, and I don't think they can match up with Missouri. So I think Missouri's going to win that game.
Yeah.
I refuse to pick Missouri to lose to anybody at home. So I think they beat Kentucky.
That's a good
And
bargain.
I'm looking at Arizona is fading.
Mhm.
Maryland and Michigan have tough games. Maryland and Michigan, first of all, play each other this week, and then Michigan plays Michigan State. Arizona's fading. I look at the other teams. Texas A&M has lost 4 in a row and plays Auburn tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Like the other teams we're talking about, I think, and ultimately it doesn't really matter if you're a 4 or a 5. But if I had to put money down today, and thank God I don't, I think I'd say Missouri at a 4.
Yeah, I think that you just made a pretty good case, which is that relatively speaking, Mizzou has a fairly easy schedule, right? And we've kept saying that though, Gabe. Here's the issue, right? Because we thought they were going to win at Vanderbilt and didn't really come up that way.
I mean, they did. They played 39 and a half minutes of winning basketball at Vanderbilt.
Correct. We also thought they were going to win at Arkansas, and that didn't really go their way. So we went into this after the Texas A&M. We said they've got the easiest remaining schedule in the SEC. They haven't really taken advantage of it yet, is my point.
Right.
So
Fair.
This week they have to take advantage of it if they want to make a 4 seed.
You have to win at Oklahoma. Like,
Yeah.
I understand it's a road game. Like, this is a game this team needs to win. I mean, for a multitude of reasons, but they're better than Oklahoma. I mean, the Missouri-Oklahoma game in Columbia looked like a scrimmage. Oklahoma was not close ever in that game. So Evan was talking about the defense for Missouri. How big a concern is this?
It's a good question. I personally think that they're okay on defense. I think that for the most part, like Vandy hit some really tough shots there, right? The Jason Edwards 3 that came before Tyler Nichols' game tying shot, that was pretty well defended, in my opinion. But as far as where their defense is compared to their offense, it's not very good. And specifically, Gabe, the defensive rebounding rate has fallen off a cliff since January. And I think that that's kind of the biggest issue for them right now.
I would go defensive rebounding rate and the percentage that opponents are shooting from inside the 3-point line. I mean,
yeah, that too.
Arkansas and Vandy just like, and look, you should shoot 65% on shots inside the paint, right? They're not that hard of shots, but I think those two things are connected. Like, these are the things Josh Gray is supposed to do for this team. Where's that? This is an area where, like we all talked about Trent Pierce's defense in the last game. He had 2 rebounds. That's not good enough. He is 6'11". He should be able to stand there and get 3 rebounds at some point.
Well, but
I'm not even kidding.
We said that about the team, the last 2 teams, right? And obviously it's not as easy as that. But like, I think part of it is the amount of zone that the team runs, right? That usually isn't conducive to being a great rebounding team. But at the same time, we saw it work in that first half of the SEC schedule. So I'm not 100% sure what's changed, but they definitely need like a return to form on the glass and, like you said, in the paint, because I'm pretty sure Vandy shot 67% from the field in the second half, and then 80% in overtime, and a whole lot of them were layups and dunks. So
Right.
that's something that definitely needs to change going into the tournaments.
And like Sam had just said in the chat, they need Josh Gray to be on the floor. Like,
Yeah,
he just wasn't on the floor a lot in the last game because he had 4 fouls.
correct.
And the thing that frustrates me about Josh Gray's fouls is you can live with them if they're hacking a guy to prevent a layup. You can live with that, but that's not what a lot of them are. A lot of them seem to be further away from the basket or illegal screens or something like that. Like, if he's going to get 4 fouls, I want him to count.
Sure, and part of that is like they want him to switch across the perimeter, and sometimes he isn't able to keep up with the guards out there. He's done a good job of it sometimes though. But you are right. Like, you want him to be an enforcer in the paint, and we haven't seen him really be that recently.
So I've got a question, and look, like, I'm not going to lie and pretend I've broken down film on this and stuff,
Yeah.
but it's been brought up on our board, and like you and I have talked about it for the last couple of years. The philosophy here is switch everything, right?
Mhm.
How much of the defensive struggles do you think are other teams just going, hey, all we've got to do is this, and we're going to get a mismatch like, we're either going to have Josh Gray guarding a guy on the perimeter, or we're going to have Tamar Bates guarding a guy in the paint.
I could see that. Yeah. I'm trying to remember who it was that, uh, like, you remember Janai Broom in the Auburn game, right? Like, they absolutely attacked the mismatch every single time that they could. So I think when you have a player or multiple players who can expose those kind of mismatches, yeah, it can be a problem, and maybe you have to switch things up defensively there. But same time, Gabe, like, when it's working, it's really hard to play against Missouri. It's incredibly difficult to move the ball against them because of how disruptive they can get, and how chaotic that switching scheme makes it. So it just feels really hot and cold right now. And recently it's been cold.
One point I want to bring up too, like, we're kind of killing the defense. I actually had a paragraph written that I had to erase, and once that game went to overtime. But that game was 71-69 Vanderbilt, and Missouri got steals on 3 straight possessions. Like, at nut cutting time, their defense is actually what gave them that 6-point lead. So the way I view this team is their defense just has to be good enough to support one of the 6 best offenses in college basketball. Like, they don't have to hold somebody to 60 points or to 35% shooting. They have to hold somebody to like 78 and 49% shooting.
Yeah. And Billy just sent us in the chat, Cruz getting switched onto AJ Hoggard hurt Mizzou in the Vandy game. So yeah, like, it.
Like, there are things you can exploit there that Dennis Gates is going. If he runs into somebody that just says, do this until they stop it, he's going to have to figure out a way to change to stop it.
I agree, for sure.
Yeah.
Should we get to some questions in the chat?
Yeah, let's Billy, go ahead and hit the chat. I'm sure we've got some questions. We're kind of at that point in the show. Fire Gates, T-Rise, appreciate that. While we're loading these up, do want to remind you guys to get in touch with our buddy James Carlton, carltoninsurance.net. You can call him at 314-961-4800. Talked with James. I'm trying to talk him into traveling to the NCAA tournament and maybe doing something with us out there. So we'll keep you posted on that. But if you have questions, we'll run through the chat here for the next few minutes before there you go. Sean was asking about the defensive metrics, and I think Evan ran through that a little bit when we had him on. All right, what 1 seed would you think Missouri would fare best against on a neutral court? So we know Duke, Auburn, and Houston are 1 seeds, right? Or do we maybe not know that about Houston yet?
I would pencil Houston in as a 1 seed. If they're going to go 19-1 against the Big 12. I think that's probably worthy of a 1 seed.
So we are basically choosing Tennessee, Florida, or Bama. Which of those three do you think ends up as a 1 seed?
It's a good question. I kind of lean Florida right now, but it's going to come down to this last week of the regular season, I think. And maybe also the SEC tournament. Do you have a strong opinion, Gabe?
I kind of lean Tennessee because Tennessee just beat Bama. They split with Florida, and I think Florida and Alabama are both going to lose a game this week.
Mm.
And I don't think Tennessee's going to lose a game this week.
Okay. So I'll go with your prediction there, right? Tennessee, Houston, Duke, Auburn, all 1 seeds. Which one would Missouri fare best against?
I don't even think this is a question.
No, it's Tennessee.
Yeah. I mean, like, because Missouri really could easily have beaten Tennessee in Knoxville this year.
Yeah.
And I understand they did beat Florida in Gainesville. They wouldn't be scared to death if they played Florida or anything. But if I'm Missouri and you tell me you're going to be a 4 or a 5 seed, give me Tennessee as the one. If I can pick the one, that's who I want.
Yeah, I 100% would sign up for that because, like, not only did Mizzou almost beat them, but it's a good matchup for them. I think Tennessee doesn't have a lot of guys who can exploit the mismatches on defenses, like we talked about. Like, it took a pretty historic shooting night for them to beat Mizzou at home. So I think that would be a favorable job for Mizzou.
Here's why I'd prefer Tennessee over Florida or Alabama. Because Florida and Alabama are as good as Missouri offensively. Like, Missouri can play well offensively, and it may not matter, right? We almost saw that at Mizzou Arena when Bama came here. Like, Missouri played a hell of an offensive game, and they were still in a game with 3 minutes left because Alabama was so good. So, like, Caleb Grill can hit 8 threes, and those teams can still beat you. If Caleb Grill hits 8 threes and you score 90 points, Tennessee's not beating you.
Correct. Yeah, like Tennessee just doesn't have the same kind of firepower as those other two squads.
Right. Like, they have to win, and it's why I think they find themselves in the tournament under Rick Barnes, losing. Like, I can't pick Tennessee to a Final Four because they're inevitably going to get in a game, I don't care whether it's Missouri or not, they're going to get in a game where there's like 9 minutes left in the game and they're down 50-32.
Yeah. Exciting stuff. 50-32.
I've seen it happen too much. Why is Vandy not ranked? I know this was I don't know if you thought they should have been ranked, but you definitely thought they should have gotten more respect in the SEC power poll too.
No, I'm totally on the same page as totally Trav. Vandy just beat 2 top 15 teams. Like, how are they
on the road?
One on the road. They didn't move up at all in our SEC poll on 24/7 Sports, and I think they sat 27th in the AP Top 25 poll. Like, I don't get it. I don't know what everybody else was watching this week, but Vandy deserves to be ranked.
I think people have made up their minds who's good and not good, and they see the name Vandy and they're not voting for him, despite the fact that Vandy probably, I mean, I don't know. I assume they had the best week in the SEC. Anybody have a better week last week?
Maybe Tennessee beating Alabama, but no. I'll say it. Vandy was the best team. They had the best week.
Yeah, I think so. Vandy's 10th there. I'd have them above Ole Miss, wouldn't you?
I had them above Ole Miss.
Would you have them above Mississippi State?
I had them above Mississippi State.
Would you have them above Kentucky?
I had them above Kentucky.
Would you have them above Texas A&M?
That's where I drew the line. And I honestly, you could make the case.
You can make the argument.
Yeah. I just think.
I mean, they just won in College Station. And look, A&M's in kind of a free fall. Like, they've lost against good teams, but they've lost 4 games in a row.
Yes, but for me, the reason I kept Texas A&M in that 6th spot was just like, it was at Mississippi State, home for Tennessee, home for Vanderbilt, and then at Florida. Like that's a bloodbath of a schedule. So I still kind of think Texas A&M is better than the recent results, but a 4-game losing
by the
streak.
way, their next game is home against Auburn.
Right.
So 4 about to be 5.
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead.
Well, they do close out the season at LSU, so I'm thinking they won't go into the NCAA tournament on a 5-game losing streak or a 6-game losing streak.
I agree. Phil is asking about our plans for covering the tournament. So, first of all, Drew's going down to Norman tomorrow night, so he'll be at the OU game. We'll both cover Kentucky, the home finale. Drew will be in Nashville for however long Missouri is in Nashville. He will arrive on Wednesday, unless if things break right. And by break right, I mean Missouri basically has to win 2, and the Florida-Alabama loser has to lose on Saturday. So basically, Alabama needs to lose on Wednesday because Florida's not losing at home to LSU. So he will be at the SEC tournament, and then we're both planning to be at the NCAA tournament, unless we just run into a situation where like plane tickets on Selection Sunday are $1,500 a piece or something. Then Drew will be there, and I will stay home. But we are both currently planning to be there. We will have someone. I know this is disappointing to you guys. Drew will be at every Missouri game the rest of the year. So, Drew, I'll say this, man. If they lose at Oklahoma and they lose their first game in Nashville and they lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament, like you really might have to polish up the resume, man. Like the fans might not allow you back.
And I would get it. It's understandable. I'm a superstitious guy myself. So no, I would totally get it.
Not superstitious, just a little stitious.
Yeah.
You know, in the words of Michael Scott. So yeah, those are the plans. I don't know. This feels like a weird time of year where it's like, okay, can we just get to the good stuff? Like, I understand these 2 games matter. There's still things to be decided. Like I know Kansas and Houston play tonight. And there are games that I'm interested in this week, but I don't know about you, man. It's like, all right, can we get to the conference tournament? Because this just seems like I'm biding my time.
Yeah, I feel you there. We do have a senior day to get through, and that'll be fun. But yeah, like I'm itching to get some tournament games. I don't know how much Sunbelt basketball you watch, Gabe, but
very little.
Okay, I figured. No, but my former editor at the San Marcos Daily Record had a phrase. He says Sunbelt basketball is exclusively played in the Thunderdome. So I will be excited to see how that tournament shakes out. It's got an interesting bracket this year where I'm pretty sure like the 14 seed is playing the 13 seed, and then the winner of that plays the 12 seed, something like that, where there's a million tournament games going on throughout the week. And if you're at the bottom of the standings, you got to win like 7 in a row to win the tournament.
If you're the 1 seed, how many do you have to win?
I think just 2.
Okay. I kind of like it.
Yeah. And like if you're a 1-bid league like that, that's kind of how it should be, to be honest. Because you want your best team to get in.
For sure. For sure. And that's the other thing to watch over. Like right now, Missouri is projected to play, a lot of teams like Lipscomb, Yale, I've seen Chattanooga, like a lot of teams like this. We don't even know if those teams are going to be in the tournament, right? Yeah. Basically, they're just saying, I don't know, they'll probably face the 5th best low major team.
Exactly.
So it'll be interesting to see.
There was a comment that we had on the screen a little bit that I wanted to address. Hayden asked if Dennis Gates should play Trent Burns versus Oklahoma. My answer is no. If he's not playing against South Carolina, if he's not playing in a game where Vanderbilt is scoring everything at the rim, I don't think we're going to see him this year, guys.
You were off the live show by the time this question came up Saturday night, and I refused to do. I just said we're not going to do this. This is stupid. So we're not going to do this, guys. He didn't play in a 30-point win over South Carolina. He didn't play when Vanderbilt scored 912 points at the rim. He's not playing. It would be malpractice to play him at this point. The idea that Trent Burns is going to magically somehow change this defense, like, they are top 15 in the country. And I see Dylan is asking, I've been the biggest advocate for not redshirting people. What happened to that mentality? They've played 28 games already, guys. There are 2 games left in the regular season. This kid was the lowest rated recruit they had. He was always a project. He's been hurt all year. And you're pretending that he's the savior of this team. Drew, this makes me angry, man. Can you just take like, it legitimately makes me angry.
So I'll throw this in there because I know that kind of our mentality is red shirts don't matter anymore. He's not going to be here.
No, they
for
don't
4
matter at
years.
all.
Yeah. But it does help if like Trent Burns ends up staying 4 years, potentially, right? And again, like, I don't think he's going to be the same kind of impact player this year as he would be if he was a 5th-year senior.
And also, I don't even care if he stays 4 years. You owe it to the kid to preserve that option over playing him for 9 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, how often are you going to play? And that's the thing. If this was football and you got to play in 4 games without, cool, put him in there. I don't care. But you don't. The second he steps on the floor, this whole season is gone for him. So he legitimately could play 9 minutes and then go, well, I don't have that extra. And he may not use the extra year, and I don't care. But this has to be the last time we do this. Watch, he's going to play them. He's going to play Wednesday night now, and I'm going to have to do this all over again.
Yeah.
I'm going to look like an idiot.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, so let's just finish up with this. Missouri gets okay. Let's get Jason's question first, then we'll finish up with a couple of predictions. If Mizzou gets to the Final Four, when does the statue of Dennis Gates get dedicated? Before the plane lands from San Antonio.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's the biggest accomplishment in, I guess, program history, right?
Right. They haven't made it, correct?
Like, they've not made it. I know Missouri won 4 Big 8 titles in a row from 1980 to 83. They went undefeated in the Big 8. Like, those things are harder than making the Final Four. But the Final Four would be the biggest thing the program's ever done.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people give you grief for at one time saying that Gates is a god, but at that point, I don't think there would be much argument.
Right. Not only would they build the statue, they'd put it on top of the Methodist church downtown. So.
It's a shrine. It's an idol.
Exactly.
They pray to it.
Let's finish with this. Missouri is what seed in the SEC tournament?
In the SEC tournament, I'll say 5th seed. I think too many other things have to happen for them to sneak into the top 4.
And really only 2 things have to happen, but here's the problem. I think Alabama's beating Florida in Tuscaloosa.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Florida's beating Ole Miss. So I just don't think there's a path there for Missouri. I think Texas A&M will lose to Auburn, so I don't think A&M catches Missouri. I would agree with the 5 seed. And then, again, you're playing – it's going to be Georgia or Texas or Arkansas or maybe Oklahoma in that first game on Thursday. You should win that and then go play, whether it's Tennessee, Florida, or Bama, then go take your shot, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Missouri is what seed in the NCAA tournament?
NCAA tournament. You know, I originally thought 5 seed, but after hearing what you said about kind of some of the teams above them and who they've got to play, I think that they can move up into a 4 seed, and which would be crazy that they get seeded higher in the NCAA than they do in the SEC. Right. But like, that's kind of the reality of the conference this year. So I think that Mizzou ends up as a protected seed for March Madness.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4, and I'm going to say they get sent to Denver. And I will be completely honest, part of that is because this is what I'm rooting for. This is
Mhm.
because I think Wichita's out, and the reason I think I think Missouri's passing Texas A&M, but the reason I think Wichita's out is even if you don't send Texas Tech there, I think Iowa State gets sent there.
Yeah.
Like I think there's enough teams to fill Cleveland and Milwaukee that Iowa State goes to Wichita, because I can tell you guys, Iowa State fans travel, man. Like they will show up in Wichita. And so I think Iowa State will go down there, and I think Missouri will join Texas Tech in Denver is my prediction. So I say Joe Lunardi is wrong. It is not Yale in Seattle. That's my vote.
I don't know enough about sites to have a prediction on that, so I'll go with your opinion.
There you go. All right. Anything else, man, to finish up, or are we good?
I'll be in Norman this week, and I'll have a bunch of stuff coming out this weekend, Gabe. Also, I will be at the St. Louis Tiger Club tomorrow. So if you're in the area, I think it's Llewellyn's Pub.
Llewellyn's in Webster Groves.
Yeah, in Webster Groves. So at noon. So come say hello if you're out there, and be on the lookout for everything we got coming out this week.
Yeah, I will be on the Zoom with Dennis Gates at noon. So we will do that. Appreciate Evan Miyakawa for joining us. I hope you guys look, if you joined us late, go back, whether it's on YouTube or on the podcast, go back and listen to the first 20 minutes of the show. Evan had a lot of really good stuff and explained to you why no, Caleb Grill should not quit shooting. And yes, Anthony Robinson is important to Missouri and many other things. So appreciate him. Check out his site at evanmiya.com. Check out our site at powermizzou.com. Do that too. And check out James Carlton's site at carltoninsurance.net. We're just promoting every website known to man on the way out the door. Get in touch with James at 314-961-4800. He wants to be your insurance agent. I promise you he's going to save you money. He saved me money. He saved Drew money. He's going to save you money. He's going to donate to Mizzou's NIL efforts for getting a quote from him. So do all of those things. We will, I don't know the next time we'll necessarily be here. We'll do a Kentucky preview at some point this week. We'll be live after the Kentucky game. If anything else happens, we'll do it, but I'm not making Drew jump on at 11:30 from Norman. So appreciate you guys hanging out. We will talk to you next time.